Well, I'd like to invite and thank everybody for being here on tonight's Finding Flow uh, Forgiveness Meditation Workshops. For those that may be aware, every month and the last Tuesday of the month, I offer a free webinar on a different spiritual topic that really kind of comes out of my book, Finding Flow, Spiritual Practices to Reclaim Inner Peace, Balance, and Wholeness. Also related to the next book I'm working on, that'll come out next year, which is called Divine Flow: Contemplative Practices to Experience God Directly. So my passion, what I feel God calls me to do, is to provide each of us with tools that we can integrate into our lives to really get in the flow of God's sustaining grace, and also draw deeper into our inner self, our authentic self. So forgiveness is one of those topics that, how many people have trouble forgiving? Raise your hand. It's certainly a topic that in our day and age, and since the time of Christ, has always been a difficult thing for us to do. We're told to forgive, but what I recognize, and we'll talk about tonight, I don't know that anybody taught me how to forgive other than trying to just flip a switch in my brain. So tonight we'll do some welcome and introductions. We'll talk about what is forgiveness, just give it a definition to understand what it is. We'll talk about what are the impacts on our mind, body, and spirit when we don't forgive. How does it impact us as humans? Also, what are the benefits when we do forgive? How does it benefit our mind, our body, our spirit? You know, God created us as a Trinity, just like the Trinity, in our mind, body, and spirit. And then the question is, why is it so hard to forgive? And then we'll talk about the really the meat of tonight is, how do we learn to forgive? What is this forgiveness meditation? And my hope is that each one of us, those that are here live and those that will review this, the recording later, that you'll walk away tonight, like I did from how I've learned this over the years. You'll walk away with a very powerful but very simple practice, a tool you can put in your spiritual toolbox so you can learn how to forgive yourself, how to forgive others, and also just sometimes how to forgive life, because it doesn't always turn out the way we want. We'll also do a forgiveness once we learn the steps of the forgiveness meditation practice. We'll then have an opportunity tonight to actually experience it. I'll walk us through a guided meditation that you can really experience it, so you can really put some meat and potatoes on the practice. We'll talk about what that experience is like, and then we'll end with a closing prayer. I love this saying from Marianne Williamson: the practice of forgiveness is our most important contribution to healing of the world, basically. And it's so true that, as we'll talk about, forgiving ourselves for being imperfect in many ways, and then forgiving others is really how we go about bringing that healing, that compassion, that love, Christ love, into the universe. I thought I'd real quick just give you a kind of a context of where in the heck did this, that we'll talk about, this forgiveness meditation come from. So just a short story about me. So several years ago, I've been a lawyer for 39 years, had my own practice, had mentored several individuals to take over the practice, one in particular. And all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, the wheels fell off the wagon. The individual I had mentored over the years made a bunch of unfair decisions, and really was a very difficult situation, causing me to decide to leave the law firm, and kind of a God nudge too, because I can do more spiritual direction, more of these workshops, more writing. But it was really caused a lot of pain and hardship within me. And it was like everyone kept telling me, my spiritual director, said, well, just forgive this person. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but how do I do that? Do I just flip a light switch and all of a sudden I forgive? Nobody taught me how to move beyond the intellect into a real experiential way of practicing forgiveness. And so earlier this year, I went on a loving kindness meditation retreat, a 10-day retreat. And the first thing that I was sharing we met once a day with the spiritual director of the retreat. And I initially met with him and just said, I'm not getting into this. I'm blocked. I can't seem to move into this loving kindness practice. And so he pulled out this book, Guide to Forgiveness Meditation by Bhante Villamarsi, who is the Buddhist monk that founded this meditation practice we'll experience tonight. And he said, I want you to practice this forgiveness meditation for the next several days and see if you can let go of that anger, that frustration. And I did. I practiced it, and within several days, the whole retreat changed. I was able to forgive. And when my mind went back to being angry at this individual and others, I learned to practice a tool to be able to do that. And so I felt so compelled that this practice that certainly comes from a Buddhist tradition is to bring it into the Christian tradition. And so for me, this forgiveness meditation, the loving kindness, which was last month's workshop webinar on loving kindness, it was really putting on the mind of Christ. And this tool is one that really, I think, unblocks us from that unforgiveness that we can experience. So that's kind of the context where this came from. And so now I've been practicing it for almost 9 months or longer and have been teaching it to my spiritual direction clients, integrating into my own life, and really feel that it is a simple tool we can use to really experience and integrate forgiveness in our lives. So as we begin, how about we do this? Let's just go around our Zoom circle here. If people want to unmute themselves and maybe tell us your name, where you're from, and then bring to mind tonight as you sit here, who or what would you like to forgive? And you can name it out loud if you like to, but you can also just silently, just when it's your turn, you can just say, yeah, I'm bringing to mind a person or something I need to forgive. If you don't want to name it, yeah, it's certainly something very personal. But if you do want to name it, that's fine too. So if you want to, how about somebody want to begin and tell us your name, where you're from, and who or what would you like to forgive? Because at the end of tonight, with this practice, we'll come back to that after you've had the meditation experience this evening. We'll come back to, wow, were you able to find some relief, some release of, and experience some forgiveness for that person, place, or that thing? So who wants to begin?
I will start that because I have to leave. So
super.
It's Betty Ann from St. Albert, Alberta, Canada. And I am bringing to mind someone I have to forgive.
Okay, yeah, great. Glad you're here. Thank you, Betty Ann. Yeah. Randy?
Hi, my name is Randy from South Florida. And what I would like to develop is the ability to forgive Hashem, the higher power, God the Father, for creating life on this planet so difficult, so much hate, so much difficulty, so much suffering in families, so much suffering. What is the lesson God wants to give us here? It doesn't make sense. My mind can develop a better world than this world. I'm telling you.
I appreciate that, Randy. I often tell my wife, if I were God, I'd give everybody a cell phone with a direct dial number to God, but I hear you. Yeah, no, that's good. We do need to forgive God, the Yahweh, yeah. So that's a good thing to bring. Thank you, Randy. Anybody else? Yeah.
I'm Jan. I live outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan. I have multiple people, so
Yeah, exactly.
Can we focus on one for tonight?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Whatever works. Yeah, if there's one person, or probably the person right now that comes to mind that's the most difficult in your life experience. Yeah, good deal. So yeah, Joan.
Hi, I'm Joan Bauman from Holland, Michigan. And I'd actually like to forgive myself. So,
yep.
or yeah, what I call poor choices I've made in my past. And so
yeah, very good. Yeah, thank you, Joan. Yeah. Susan, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Susan. I'm in Fort Lauderdale, and I would like to also forgive myself for being so hard on myself.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you both. That's in my mind too. That's a place I often have to begin, and where I is to forgive myself. And as we'll learn, that's probably the beginning point. We do need to forgive ourselves. And yeah, I'm like you guys. I'm a perfectionist. I can if I do anything right, I'll figure out 10 ways I did it wrong, basically, and that's what I focus on. So yeah, forgiving myself also. So yeah, so thank you very much. That's yeah. So let me share my screen here. So let's talk about what is forgiveness. Mother Teresa says, so it's obviously very important. Mother Teresa, now Saint Teresa, says if we really want to love, we must learn how to forgive. And it's interesting. What I appreciate what she says is we must learn how to forgive. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and a gentleman was saying, it's interesting when we have little children, our little children, they don't need to learn how to be selfish. They don't need to learn how to throw temper tantrums when there's a toy that they want in the store and they can't have. So there is that sense of an unlearning that we have to do. And so learning to forgive is really a practice and a conscious practice. Otherwise, as we'll find out, it drags us around, by our neck basically, and causes a lot of suffering. So forgiveness, I just kind of threw out this definition. Forgiveness is a conscious decision. So it's something we have to intend to do to let go of resentment, anger, or the desire for retribution towards someone who has wronged us, even if they do not deserve it. And that's the key part of it. And we'll talk about why it's hard to let go, is because many times, even ourselves, we don't feel we're worthy to forgive, or the people that have harmed us, oh no, they're not worthy to forgive. It involves releasing the emotional weight and freeing oneself from the negative impacts of holding on to grievances. Forgiveness, I think this is important, does not necessarily mean forgetting the wrong or condoning it. Instead, it's about finding our own inner peace, our own healing, and creating that inner space within our heart space, within our mind, body, and spirit for compassion and understanding. And that's what this practice will teach us. How do we create that space within us to experience compassion and the desire to forgive? It's a process of choosing love and mercy over bitterness, ultimately leading to personal and spiritual growth. And one of the things that I've learned over the years, actually, my father taught me that, is we can forgive a person, but we don't have to trust them. And I think there's a fine distinction there, because if there's people in our lives that, maybe we'll never be able to face make amends with, or maybe we do, but we can also be, as Jesus says, be, wise as a fox, but as gentle as a lamb. And so I think sometimes it's okay to say, well, I forgive this person, but I also recognize they're probably a person that's not going to go on my inner circle of trust, basically. So that really is kind of a concept of what forgiveness is. And then the question is, what impact does unforgiveness have on our mind, body, and spirit? So let me just throw that out there. Right now, we've each kind of named someone or something that we wish we could forgive. If you think about that person, place, or thing, what do you notice within yourself when you sit there with that? They frustrate me, they anger me, I anger myself. What do you notice about your in your body? Do you just kind of, what do you notice in your mind? What do you notice in your spirit? Anybody want to share?
I'll share. I'm not sure I can articulate this well, but you sent out an email earlier this week, well, just yesterday, Monday, relative to the ego.
Yeah, yeah,
I think what I feel sometimes is that it involves my ego. My ego is in the way. I don't know. It's causing me angst and stress because my action was something that my ego said, oh, you know,
yeah, yeah.
that's not appropriate. I'm not articulating this well, but I think they're related. I just haven't I haven't figured out exactly how they're related.
Yeah. So it's almost like the ego gets stung like a bee, like, right? You know, I mean,
Yes.
and the ego wants to cling to it, like, doggone it, you know. Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. There's an ego death we have to go through, as Monday's simple wisdom reflection that went out yesterday was about. Yeah. So the ego
Mhm.
is involved in what we feel. It's like, this doesn't feel good. My ego is is restless and angry, frustrated. Yeah. Yeah. For
Yeah.
many times I'll find in my head, it's like, you know, if you ever see electric wires that are zapping at each other, it's like I feel this zapping, and I'm like, you know, the grumpy old man in my head is grimacing and angry and frustrated and wants to get revenge, you know, make it right. Anybody else? What do you notice when you're not able to forgive somebody and focusing on somebody that really makes you frustrated? Randy?
Well, in the Course in Miracles, it says forgiveness is my key to happiness. And so when we're full of resentment or angry and not forgiving, we're certainly not happy. We're
Yeah.
certainly not trusting. So I'm not trusting God if I look at everything bad. And I'm going by my belief system, which may be limited compared to wondering, is there a lesson there for me to learn to let go
Mm.
of my ego a little bit?
Yeah. Wow.
So
Powerful.
the story of Helen Schuckman was two psychologists, and I work in psychology, who are bickering, right, and it's about being right and making the other person wrong. So the ego has to be right, and it doesn't let us, and then it can attack itself. So
Yeah.
it's really not going to make us happy or peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're miserable, we're unhappy when we're angry and unable to forgive somebody. Yeah. Good point. And yeah, the Course in Miracles certainly is all about that for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. So yeah, let me just share my screen. So from our mind, so we'll talk about mind, body, and spirit, how it affects us. We've already kind of talked about some of those, and we'll just give it some more meat and potatoes there. So the mind has mental and emotional risks when we're unforgiving. That increased stress and anxiety. You know, we become the nervous Nelly, that you know, we're stressful, we're anxious. We kind of cling to and hold on to anger. It causes stress, leading to feelings of mental exhaustion. I mean, it's tiring to really, I'm sorry, to hate, you know, to hate somebody. It's mentally exhausted. It takes a lot of energy. And that the mind remains trapped in like a loop of negative thoughts and emotions. It's like, you know, that you think about it on your computer, you know, when it's not working right and that little spinning goes round and round, you know, that's like my brain, you know, when I'm angry at somebody, my brain is just spinning round and round. You're just regurgitating why I'm angry and why this person or myself has done me wrong. There's bitterness. Yeah, that sense of Randy too. We're not happy at all. There's emotional pain, which actually causes us to overshadow the positive emotions, the positive things in our lives. We become so focused on the negative, it's difficult to experience joy, love, or that inner peace. And it over long haul, it can cause mental health issues. I mean, it can certainly cause uh, depression, certainly the blues, mental health struggles. We might even reach for, you know, things we shouldn't, addictions to numb the pain that we feel, which just adds another layer of problems, basically. So it also decreases our self-esteem. I also often notice when I'm angry at somebody and just continuing regurgitating in my mind, I add a second layer of I'm angry at myself too. It's like, dang it, I shouldn't be this angry at this person. I should forgive them. So now I have two problems. I'm angry at the person, and now I'm angry at myself because I shouldn't, you know, in my mind, I shouldn't, you know, be that angry. I should be able to forgive it, like flipping the light switch. So yeah, our mind mentally and emotionally gets impacted. Physically, negative emotions, you know, get stuck in our body and it blocks the flow of positive energy and love. You know, Teilhard, or the Jesuit priest says, he taught years ago that, you know, God's love is a form, it is divine energy, and it flows through us. When love is flowing through us, you know, it's the Spirit of God, the flow of God flowing through us. And when we're negative emotion, it's literally like we're blocking that. It's like if you ever had a hose, a garden hose, and you squeeze it, the water doesn't flow. It backs up and it can't go anywhere. Sometimes it even bubbles out sideways. So we're blocking the flow of positive energy and love. And then it causes illness. As they say, mind, body, and spirit are all connected. So chronic stress from harboring that anger can weaken our immune system. It makes the body more vulnerable to illness, inflammation, infections, heart disease, high blood pressure, even digestive problems. We can feel it in our gut, like, oh, my gut is just angry. The tension in our body, the emotional pain, shows itself as tension. We can experience headaches, muscle stiffness, our shoulders, like, we're ready to fight. It can reduce our overall well-being and energy levels. And it can even cause us unable to sleep. I know once in a while, I'm lucky that, like my dad, I'm able to get to sleep pretty good. But sometimes if I wake up in the night and I'm regurgitating some wrong that somebody did to me, it's like, oh, I got to go downstairs and get a glass of milk and talk to the creator to be able to let go of the anger that I'm regurgitating. So it certainly can impact our sleep, basically. So, and the spiritual impact, I love this, what St. Augustine says: resentment, anger, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. It's like, oh, wow, how crazy that is that we could ever do that. But that's in essence kind of what we do. We're drinking the poison ourselves, hoping this other person, will experience, the horribleness or die, And so spiritually, we lack that inner peace. Exactly what Randy said. We're not happy at all. Holding on to grudges blocks access to inner peace and spiritual growth. It prevents us from living in the present moment, hinders our connection to love, compassion, and a higher spiritual purpose. We kind of take on this, this mean, grumpy old person, attitude of, I got to protect myself from everybody. The world stinks, and I just got to, go into survival mode. It blocks our spiritual growth because we're so focused on the negative energy, the anger, the frustration. It can impact we can say, I'm just going to give on prayer, meditation, any of these spiritual practices. So we can't cultivate compassion and humility. It separates us from others in a sense of oneness with God, because we just, we're angry at this person, so we're separated from them. We're angry at other people. And in many cases, we get angry at God. As Randy said, we get, God, it shouldn't be this way. Doggone it. Why don't you do things differently? I would have done things different. So there's just a sense of separation from our inner self, other people, and God. It weighs heavily on all aspects of our well-being, our mind, body, and spirit. And it does create long-term suffering and prevents us from experiencing holistic health and spiritual flourishing. So the next slide. So when we choose to forgive, so the flip side is, the good news is, when we do practice forgiveness, as we'll learn tonight, when we choose to forgive, it benefits our mind, body, and spirit in life-giving ways. So just take a moment and maybe bring to mind some person or some time in your life when you've forgiven somebody. What do you notice, within yourself, your energy level, your physical body, your spiritual? When you do forgive, what do you experience? I know for me, and it goes to what Randy said too, I experience, oh, this is an invitation from God to grow. So I stop being angry at this person and I begin to say, okay, God, what are you teaching me? So it leads me into a sense of balanced humility. Like, okay, God, what's the life lesson? How are you teaching me to love? So it opens me, when I do forgive, to greater spiritual growth. Anybody else? Does anybody feel like a release in your body, like a lightning?
Yeah,
when you
I'll just say, just like a sense of peace,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
just you feel better, you feel good, you feel at peace, like you did the right thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's that fruit of the spirit, that the Galatians
Right.
talk about. Yeah, love, peace, joy. So we experience the fruits of the spirit. Yeah, peace for sure. Yeah, very true, Joan. Yeah. Randy, you were going to say something?
The exact same thing what Joan is saying. It's kind of like a release. When I was holding on to people who wronged me or even to God, I said, oh, maybe I can be humble and I can learn. There's an openness, there's an opening, it feels good to forgive. The
Yeah.
ego mind wants to be right, and I'm going to hold on to that. And this is right, and this is and even against myself, I'm going to blame myself for this thing. And how long does it take? There's a guy that wrote a book called Compassion versus Self-Hate. He was a psychiatrist, and he failed the 5th grade,
Oh,
and he really beat himself up over that for many, many years
wow.
until he learned to have compassion and say, well, maybe my expectations.
Mm.
And then he had some quote failures later on, and he learned that forgiving himself and seeing it as a learning. So I think forgiveness is a grace that God gives us, because God made us to make mistakes. You know any human beings that are perfect
Yeah.
outside of the ones that are divine?
Yeah.
Who hasn't made mistakes?
Yeah. Wow. So true. Yeah.
Maybe God expects us to make mistakes and to learn from it.
Yeah. Yeah. That human divine element within us. Yeah, for sure. Wow. I love that. Yeah. So yeah, just kind of the summary I did here is when we choose to forgive the mind, there's reduced stress and anxiety. We're able to let it go. Okay, whatever, let it flow. So we release that emotional burden of anger and resentment. It reduces our stress level. It allows the mind to just relax, just chill, basically. And letting go, it frees us from that cycle of negative thoughts, that spinning whirl in our mind, the monkey mind that goes round and round with this shouldn't be the way it is, and they need to do this or that, or should have done that, or I should have done that. It brings about that emotional healing and peace, exactly as you said, Joan. It does bring that inner peace, some healing that takes place within our body. It replaces bitterness with peace, enabling us to experience that sense of calm, joy, and emotional stability. We're happy. We experience the fruits of the spirit and improve mental health. It literally, doctors and psychologists teach us that, when we do forgive, our depression rate goes down. We're not depressed as much. We actually experience joy, happiness, and peace. Anxiety goes down. We don't live as much in fear. We live more in love, certainly. And positive emotions like empathy and compassion. We can walk a mile, perhaps, in the other person's shoes to understand, as we'll talk about, that they didn't understand at the time what they did or why they did it. And it boosts our mental well-being in the sense of, wow, when we do forgive somebody, we're so hard on ourselves, as some of you mentioned. But when we do forgive, we go, wow, I really did that. I have a grandson who's 2 years old, and his big thing is he goes, I did that. I did that. When he, cuts something on his plate, or he does something. We had dinner with him tonight, my wife and I, and he goes, I did that. I did that. And it's like, yeah, when we do forgive, yeah, we kind of go, wow, I did that with God's grace. I did that. I replaced my anger with love, my fear with love. So mentally, it helps us. Physically, we experience lower blood pressure. The risk of heart disease goes down. We have a stronger immune system because the body is functioning. It's not putting all this energy into, fighting our anger. It's allowing us to flow. The tension goes down. Our sleep improves. And again, we unblock those trapped negative emotions. There's literally a release that many times we can feel in our body when the love within us, God's divine energy, begins to flow. Not that we're ever separated from that, but we, in our human, we've clung to the anger, so the divine flow can't flow through us. So we open our bodies to the flow of love and inner peace. Spiritually, again, more inner peace. It's a practice. And again, I think, as we say over and over again tonight, and we've already recognized, forgiveness is a practice. We don't just, oh, I forgive this person and I'm done. The tools we'll learn tonight, we can come back to them over and over again whenever that negative lack of forgiveness arises. So it is a practice that we cultivate. It's like tending our inner garden of inner peace, allowing us to let go of past hurts and live in the present moment. There's a sense of we achieve more wholeness and tranquility. We become open to more spiritual growth. Okay, God, what are you teaching me? How am I learning from this experience? Life is my teacher. What is it teaching me? Our relationships restore, we forgive people and fracture relationships. There's reconciliation, deeper connection with ourselves, with God, and with others. As Joan was talking about that ego, there's freedom from the false ego. It's like, oh, we begin to recognize, oh, that's my false ego that wanted to hang on to this. So we're able to identify the false ego and let go of its grip, which thrives on pride and the need for revenge. We let go of those egos, attachments, the mind-made self, the not self, as some call it, that enables us to experience that really a sense of liberation and oneness. You think about Jesus on the cross. His last words were, well, some of his last words is, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." I don't think that was just, oh, I think I'll just do this. I think it was a lifelong practice of his human part connected with the divine part of him that was able to fully embrace the sense of, I think he really did forgive each one of us. They know not what they do. And we'll talk about that. That's actually the part of this practice is the lack of understanding. And so I think Jesus points us right to this practice we'll experience tonight. We experience the fruits of the Spirit, love, peace, and joy. And the little picture here is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, the fruits of the Spirit. As St. Paul outlines in Galatians 5:22. And that's how we can kind of know, well, am I in the flow of what St. Ignatius calls consolation? Am I experiencing the fruits of the Spirit? Okay, keep doing what I'm doing. Or am I in desolation? I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm not forgiving. Okay, desolation, as St. Ignatius would say, invites us to grow, to lean into God's grace, to begin to say, okay, God, what do I need to do to move through this space to increase this virtue? And typically it's a practice, a spiritual practice that we can enter into. Then the question becomes, why is it so hard to forgive? First of all, just recognizing the fact that it is hard to forgive. It's our human nature. Some would say that when we were cavemen and cave women, we had to fight for survival. And so the reason we walk around in this negative protective mode is that we're still kind of stuck in the survival mode. Obviously, that's not who we are. We don't need to, in every instance, protect ourselves. We need to forgive. And I like this little comic here, the homeowner yelling at the little kids, "This is the 70th time I've forgiven your baseball through my window. This is the last time," basically. And this guy is obviously experiencing difficulty in forgiving these poor kids. And I think the reason to understand, one, to acknowledge it is hard to forgive, and that's part of our human nature, and to understand why it's hard to forgive. Some of the things we've already talked about. Joan mentioned that attachment to the ego, the false self, the mind-made self, or the not self, not our authentic self. Pride comes in there. Doggone it, this person shouldn't have done this to me. I'm better than how they treated me. So we feel like we're justified to hold on to our anger and pain. There's a book, my go-to book when I get the blues, called The Zen Path to Depression. And he talks about anger has two energies. One is the negative energy that pushes us into, I'm angry, and at least we feel like we're alive. We got some energy going here, but it's the wrong kind. Or we can use anger to recognize, oh, wait a minute, there's a positive energy here. God's inviting me to let go of my false ego. God's inviting me to practice the virtue of forgiveness. There's also the fear of losing control. This person can come back and hurt me again, or I can hurt myself again. I can make bad decisions, as we all do in life, basically. And so there's a sense that we feel like we're going to lose power. if we forgive. We feel we're in control of the situation, and forgiveness can be seen as giving up. The fear of being hurt again, that survival mode of self-protection. Trust issues. When someone betrays or wrongs us, it damages our ability to trust, and we believe that forgiving them makes us naive or open to future harm, particularly when when there isn't reconciliation with the person, there isn't a rebuilding of trust that takes time. We might stay stuck in this. We don't trust anybody or anything, basically. The desire for justice or revenge, the need for retribution. It feels unfair to forgive somebody when they haven't paid for the hurt that they caused. We may want them to be punished before we feel ready to let go of our resentment. Holding on to anger as a weapon. How many of us have experienced or used or had done it ourselves, the silent treatment, I'm just not going to talk to you. So the anger becomes a weapon that we can use, or even worse, we can come out sideways and we feel like just it pushes people away. And again, we don't feel happy about that, but for somehow it just makes it even harder to forgive. Other reasons is we go down the rabbit hole. We keep reliving that story over and over again. This picture here of the rabbit hole, we go down, why did this person do that? Or why did I do that? And as Bhante teaches in this forgiveness meditation practice, that's for perhaps a counselor to do. The why this happened might be for a counselor. The how do I let it go is really the meditation, the spiritual practice. So one of the things we'll learn as we experience this meditation, forgiveness meditation, is don't go down the rabbit hole of getting caught in the story again. But boy, we sure do. But the beauty of it is if we can recognize, oh, there I go again. I'm back in, they said this, they said that. Oh, these are the hurtful words. We can say, oh, you know what? I'm going down the rabbit hole again. I need to stop being the victim here. I'm going to, take the high road here. The fear of letting go, misunderstanding what forgiveness is. We think that forgiveness, is that we, if it's ourselves we can't forgive, we're like, what's a fancy term? When you're beating yourself up over and over again, scruples. We literally, St. Ignatius, when he had his big fall off the horse and he lived this horrible life, he laid on a bed of nails, basically. He just kept punishing himself. And until ultimately his spiritual mentor says, you are experiencing scruples. You are beating yourself up. Let it go. That's not what God wants, for you to punish yourself over and over again. God has already forgiven you. Can you forgive yourself? We believe that somehow forgiving will minimize the hurt. We just get those deep emotional wounds. And it's hard to go into the pain. We don't want to go into the pain, but we have to go in there to experience and let it go. The sense that we might be justifying the other person for what they did. Or we may feel that, we caused the pain. The other person perhaps projected their pain onto us, but it really wasn't us that caused it. They're projecting their stuff on us. So we take on their angst when in essence, it really isn't our stuff, it's their stuff. So that misunderstanding. So again, forgiving requires emotional strength. So it does require strength. And I think Randy's exactly right. It's a gift from God. We can pray for the grace of forgiveness. It takes humility to recognize, you know what? Okay, here's my part, perhaps in this situation, but it's not all, I'm going to learn to be compassionate with myself and other person, a willingness to move beyond the false ego and the pain and learn to trust again that leads to that inner peace, that balance, that wholeness, again, being back in the divine flow. So there's a lot of reasons. The important thing, I think, too, is we can't think our way to forgive because we're the cause of our own mental suffering. If someone has harmed us or we're harming ourselves, we whirl around in our brain. And I wish that there, like I said, that I wish there was a light switch I could just flip and, now, I've forgiven, basically. But my mind, we're made up of mind, body, and spirit. And so the mind alone is not going to be sufficient by itself to engage in forgiveness. The mind is rational. It's a good thing, but it might help us understand why we should forgive, But thinking alone isn't going to be enough, because we have to lean into, like a three-legged stool, the mind, body, and spirit. We need the mind. Okay, I need to forgive. I should forgive. And then, as we'll learn, we're going to go into the felt sense in the body of what does the desire to forgive? What does it feel like in my body? So we lean into the body, where the emotions are stored. And then we ultimately, by allowing the mind to lead us into the body and experience the felt sense of the desire to forgive, the spirit then flows within us. The Holy Spirit, God's spirit, the mind, body, and spirit, allows us to integrate that whole sense of forgiveness, the whole sense of what does forgiveness feel like within me? And we begin to experience mind, body, and spirit, that release of the negative energy. But again, the mind isn't going to do it alone, because the mind's going to put us right back into the rabbit hole, basically, a lot of times. So the question is, Jesus says, forgive 7 times 70. Okay. But what isn't in that scripture is, how do you forgive? What are the street level tools that we can use to practice forgiving? The practical, everyday methods that can help us release that resentment and embrace compassion in real life situations, particularly, as this graphic says, when I don't feel like forgiving. Sometimes, a lot of times, we don't feel like forgiving. And so the mind isn't going to get us there. What tool can we use? And that's really the crux of tonight is about, now that we've understood what forgiveness is, why it affects us negatively, mind, body, and spirit. We recognize when we do forgive, the mind, body, spirit benefits. We admit forgiveness is hard. We a lot of times don't want to do it because the ego wants to cling. And we also have recognized that the mind can't do it alone. So here's the tool that I'll walk us through the steps, and then we'll get an opportunity to practice it. And it really comes from this really simple book, Guide to Forgiveness Meditation, the book that my spiritual director handed me at the retreat I mentioned. It's available online. I think it's even free. So you can just Google Guide to Forgiveness Meditation. You can either purchase a copy, or I think it's even available as a PDF you can download. Because Bante's, he died last year, this Buddhist monk that was also very open to taking his practices into the Christian tradition. He wants it to be accessible to everybody. Yeah. So the Guide to Forgiveness Meditation, it helps us release the emotional blocks, allowing us to forgive ourselves and others by using what we'll come to recognize is that felt sense of forgiveness. What's the felt sense of forgiveness in my body for ourselves and then for others? The beginning point is to recognize I am the cause of my own mental suffering. When we begin to recognize that I am the cause of my own mental suffering, there's immediately a sense of freedom. Oh, okay. If I've caused something, if it's within me, then I also have the ability, with God's grace and the tool we'll learn tonight, I have the ability to release that suffering and experience inner peace. But we have to recognize that we are the cause of our own mental suffering, typically because we do not understand our own actions or those of others. We relieve our mental suffering through the forgiveness practice when we begin with that. It helps us let go of the pain, and we create space for the loving kindness that we can then practice to arise within us. We open ourselves, we unblock ourselves, mind, body, and spirit, to let go of the unforgiveness, experience the desire to forgive, and go from there. So what are the steps? There's really 3 simple steps, and we'll get to practice them. So the first step is extending forgiveness to yourself. So the first thing, and again, I'll talk us through this, then we'll get to experience it through a guided meditation. So the first thing we do is we find some time, hopefully 30 minutes at a minimum, to sit in a comfortable position. And we're going to forgive ourselves, because forgiving yourself is as important as forgiving others. because guilt, our own guilt, our shame is toxic. We relive the mistake over and over again. We fail to love ourselves. We fail to give ourselves. And Jesus kind of summarized the whole law of love, saying, love God, love yourself, love others. And unless we learn to love ourselves and allow that flow of God's love to flow within us, we typically are not able to extend that love to others because we're blocked. So we begin the practice by forgiving ourselves. How do we do that? Well, it's a meditation practice. So you find a place to sit comfortably. The recommendation is 30 minutes as possible. And you just say to yourself, I'm going to sit here for these 30 minutes, no matter how much I fidget, no matter how much I feel like getting up, no matter whether, all of a sudden, oh, I got to do this or I got to do that. No, set a timer if you need to. I have a grandfather clock in our living room that strikes every 15 minutes. So I know the time it strikes 2 times, that's the 30 minutes. Whatever you do, just, typically set a timer or find some way where you're not looking at the clock, where you're just saying, I'm going to sit here for 30 minutes. And that's exactly at this retreat I went on after I met with my spiritual mentor. And he gave me the book and said, you need to practice a forgiveness meditation. I went to my room. I set the timer on my cell phone for 30 minutes, and then I began. So the second part of this forgiving ourselves, once we've gotten comfortable, is we start with a mantra. We say to yourself words, very simple. I forgive myself for not understanding. I forgive myself for not understanding. And it's just a simple phrase. What happens is when we give the mind something to chew on, like this mantra, I forgive myself for not understanding, the mind quiets because the mind can only think one thought at a time. And so by giving it something to chew on, I call it giving it a banana to chew on, the monkey mind. By using this phrase, a similar phrase, I forgive myself for not understanding, the mind relaxes, and ultimately, whenever the mind becomes distracted or wants to go down the rabbit hole, we just gently, I forgive myself for not understanding. We're really surrendering to the Holy Spirit in my mind. We're opening ourselves to grace, letting the mind quiet itself. You let whatever emotions arise as you repeat that phrase. You begin to say, I forgive myself for not understanding. And if things rise up, I tell you, as I sat for that initial 30 minutes, God just kind of was like a windshield of all the things I just gently said to I forgive myself for being a perfectionist. I forgive myself for the past mistakes I made. I forgive myself. I just kind of brought up gently without focusing overly on it, not going on the rabbit hole. Whatever rose up, I forgive myself for being impatient. I forgive myself for wanting to leave this retreat because it hurts and I don't want to deal with this crap. So whatever it is, you just let it rise up and you let it go. And you just keep returning to that phrase, I forgive myself for not understanding. You don't want to use a negative phrase like I forgive myself for being an idiot. You don't want to do that. That's not going to help. Basically, now you're going back down the rabbit hole of beating up on yourself. And that's to free you. This practice is to free you from that. So you don't want to use a negative thing like I forgive myself for being stupid or being an idiot or being a jerk. No, don't go there. If you do, that you need to go back to I forgive myself for not understanding. And what we're doing is kind of going back to what Randy says is when we say I forgive myself for not understanding, we're saying I forgive myself for being perfectly human. I'm born to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And so I forgive myself for not understanding. And you let whatever rises up just come up. You just name it. You might even begin to feel the felt sense of what does it feel like to forgive myself? Where in my body? So now we're moving the mind with the mantra down into the emotion, with the, I forgive myself for not understanding or experiencing just quickly as they come up, the things I need to forgive myself for. And then we move into the body. What does it feel like to forgive myself? You might feel it in your gut. kind of a tingling, your body is digesting the hurt and letting it go. You might feel it in your heart space as a warmth, like, wow, this feels really good to forgive myself. I experienced tears. I started crying. And I just let myself cry. I've learned over the years, it's the gift of tears. The tears were like a baptism. They flood our body. They wash us clean of the negative energy. So I allowed my body to just cry. It felt so good to cry. And I didn't stop myself from crying. I just allowed myself to continue to let the tears flow. And you may, if you need to maintain that forgiveness aspect of yourself, and you continue that, like I said, for about 30 minutes until you feel like you've exhausted everything that comes up that you need to forgive, basically. So that's how step one is extending forgiveness to yourself. Does that make sense? Any questions on that initially before we move to step two? Yeah. And again, I'll walk you through a guided meditation as we integrate these. So the second step is then we extend forgiveness to others. So again, after we've kind of come to the end of I forgive myself for not understanding, we then allow ourselves to draw that phrase, I forgive you, meaning the person, place, or thing that arises for not understanding. We hold that person in our heart without diving into the story of what happened. So, example, my business partner, I forgive you for not understanding. I forgive you for not understanding. I didn't go down into the story, even though I wanted to. Well, you should have. No. I forgive you, business partner, for not understanding. I forgive you for not understanding. Because we learn, as we just recognize, the cause of our suffering, our mental suffering, is not understanding. So if we cause our own mental suffering, the people we're forgiving, we can offer the same. They hurt me. They made mistakes because they didn't understand. They didn't understand. And I don't have to figure out what they didn't understand. I just offer that same compassion. I forgive you for not understanding. I forgive God for not creating the world the way I expect it to be. Okay, that's good. I forgive the universe for being imperfect. I forgive life for not turning out the way I wanted it to be. It was supposed to be different than this. You just bring up whatever it is that rises up outside of you, people, places, and things that you just want to offer a forgiveness. And you use that phrase. So you relax into that. You allow the body to relax. You stay with that person in your mind's eye for, as long as you need to, as long as you kind of look them in the eye in your imagination, and you seriously wish them forgiveness. If you feel the resistance, which we often do, then you just relax. So if I bring up my business partner that I'm still angry out 2 years later, I just relax my body, relax my shoulders, maybe put a smile on my face to calm my body. I forgive you for not understanding. I forgive you for not understanding. And then I move to the next person, place, or thing. And what we're offering is we want to allow ourselves, as I put in bold there, allow yourself to feel the desire to forgive them within your body. You may not fully forgive them, and that's okay. You're not focusing on, well, what does forgiveness by itself feel like? It's more a sense of, what is my desire to forgive? You're tapping into your mind-body experience, your natural love within yourself that we do want to forgive. When we pull back all the onion skins of our woundedness, our authentic self is love. And so we focus on the desire. What is the desire in my body to forgive this person feel like? Again, whatever sensation arises, again, it might be a sense of warmth, a lightness within your body, an openness in your chest or your heart. It might be a tingling within you. It might be something in your gut. You just let the body's wisdom, God with God, God's wisdom in our body, just simply let us feel that. And you begin to say, wow, this feels kind of good. This desire to forgive, it's so much better than being angry. I really am experiencing the desire in my body. So you know how when you do something over and over again, like there's a light switch in this room that I'm in that in a buddy of mine, his house, he's got the exact same kind of room, but his light switch is in a different location in the room. And every time I go into his condo, it's in his bathroom, I reach for where I think the light should be. My body thinks it should be here because that's where it is in my condo, basically. And so my body has already gained, it has a memory of itself. So what we're doing is we're going back to the body's memory of what is the desire to forgive. What does that feel like within you? So the body becomes our teacher, and the mind settles down. It doesn't, and the ego relaxes, basically. So what this does, this felt sense of the desire within us, what it feels like, anchors the meditation into the body, deepening the practice and making the intention to forgive more tangible. It's not just something intellectually or we're thinking about. It's, wow, I'm experiencing the desire in my body to forgive, and I'm creating muscle memory within my body of this is the way it feels to forgive. Remember, again, to release the story. Again, don't go down the rabbit hole. Don't get caught up in the details of what happened. We might, you do that. I mean, I did that as I practice this at times, but you're able to catch yourself. Oh, there I go down the rabbit hole again. Just focus on the wish, the desire for forgiveness. If the person or situation feels overwhelming, like, oh, I'm just getting so angry, just soften, relax your body, put a smile on your face. Forgive yourself for being angry again at the person. I'm angry that I can't, like, okay. Now you're back to, I forgive myself for not letting go of my anger. That's okay. I forgive myself for not being able to forgive right now. So this whole practice is being compassionate for yourself and for the other. Does that make sense? Yeah. So those are the two parts of this. And then assuming that you have time when you're doing your meditation practice, the recommendation is to go for a walk. And you can go for a walk inside, you can go for a walk on a city block. And if you can, for about 15 minutes. And what you do, and that's again where the body begins, is you, with each step, the simple phrase you use is, I forgive you, you forgive me. I forgive you, you forgive me. So with the left foot, you when you put that down, you go, I forgive you. The right foot, you forgive me. I forgive you, you forgive me. I forgive you, you forgive me. And you're just, again, allowing the mind to relax, allowing the spirit to be open, allowing the body to just integrate without thinking. I forgive you, you forgive me. And what we'll do in our practice tonight, because we're not going to go for a walk, obviously, we'll do it with our hands. I forgive you with the left hand, you forgive me. I forgive you, you forgive me. And what it does is it just integrates that into, like, all of a sudden, mind, body, spirit, we begin to feel that. Now, someone asked me, I was sharing this and says, but this other person isn't forgiving me. So, and they may not. I mean, my business partner's never forgiven me. In fact, he sent me a text saying, I'll never forgive you. Okay, well, whatever. But it's the desire, the sense that in eternity, in the perfect world, some place on the other side, when we're all perfect, there will be forgiveness. So you're not saying, yes, this person is forgiving me. It's just you're experiencing what it might be like for this person, for you to experience that other person's forgiveness, even though in this physical life, it may never happen. So you just accept that. I forgive you, you forgive me. If distractions come up, like, if you're walking and all of a sudden a car goes by beeping, like, I forgive you. I forgive you. Yeah, you forgive me. So it's a fun thing as I learn. The next step is you can take it into the day, basically. So it's not just like on a meditation practice. That's where we teach it to ourselves. But then we can, that's what I love about this is we can take it into the day. We can, when someone or something irritates us, we can just use the simple phrase, I forgive you, you forgive me. So you're driving in traffic and somebody cuts in front of you, I forgive you, you forgive me, and you laugh and you relax into it, as opposed to flipping them an obscene gesture or shaking your fist at them. It's a new practice we can integrate. I forgive you, you forgive me. So yeah. And again, as I mentioned, throughout the rest of the day, you can return to this practice whenever you need to recenter yourself. So this person that you have forgiven in your meditation practice, they come up again, because they will, because there's still some wounds there that God wants. Okay, no big deal. I forgive you for not understanding. I forgive you for not understanding. Or the simple phrase, I forgive you, you forgive me. So you're teaching yourself the tool, the spiritual tool of, and when you recognize you're back in that angry, lack of forgiveness stage, you just, okay, yeah, that's going to happen. I know what to do with this. I forgive you, you forgive me. And all of a sudden you begin to feel the body release. It's like, whoa, this kind of, wow, this is a heck of a lot better than being angry at this person or this person, place, or thing. So at home, work, or with friends, you can practice of forgiving negative thoughts or emotions. Again, you can either use I forgive myself if you're angry at yourself. I forgive you for not understanding, Brian, or using your own name. I forgive myself for not understanding, or I forgive you, I forgive you forgive me. So whatever comes to mind with these three simple phrases. So yeah. Does that make sense? How does that sound like? Again, we'll get to practice it, but any questions? What does that practice sound like for you? Something you want to be able to try, do you think? Yeah. I think the beauty of it is it's so simple. We're retraining ourselves to be love, literally. Yeah, yeah. We're training ourselves to be like Jesus, which is, Father, forgive them. They do not understand. With that phrase, I forgive them for not understanding. So we're literally using Jesus's words in a sense. I forgive you for not understanding. So makes sense? Any questions before we try it as a guided meditations? Any thoughts? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here again, and we're going to just take about maybe 5 to 7 minutes, and I'll walk us through this. If you'd like to, it might be helpful to turn your video screen off. If you'd like to, feel free to do that, so you're not distracted. You want to close your eyes. To get in a comfortable position now. So just lean back, get in a comfortable position, close your eyes. Maybe take a couple of deep breaths. It's the pneuma, the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit breathing in and through you. Maybe take a big inhale breath and let it go. Maybe take another deep breath, cleansing breath in and let it go. And then take another deep cleansing breath and let it go. And then just do a little body scan. Relax the top of your head. Relax your forehead. Relax your eyes. Relax your jaw. Bring a simple smile to your face with your lips, recognizing that science says when we smile, it releases calming endorphins all through our body from our brain. So bring that gentle smile to your face. Relax your shoulders. Relax your throat. Relax your arms. Relax your fingers and your hands. Feel the flow of God's love in your heart space. The gentle beating of your heart. The peace of Christ flowing in your heart space. Relax your stomach. Relax your hips, your thighs. Relax your ankles and your feet. And just be present to this moment, here and now. And then let's begin with self-forgiveness, forgiving yourself. Silently say to yourself, I forgive myself for not understanding. I forgive myself for not understanding. If something arises in particular that you'd like to forgive, just name it. I forgive myself for being so harsh on myself. Whatever it is that rises up that you'd like to forgive, just name it and let it go. Whenever your mind wanders, just come back to the mantra, I forgive myself for not understanding. Notice if there's a felt sense in your body, what that desire to forgive yourself feels like. Where do you notice the desire, the forgiveness for yourself within your body? And offer yourself some loving kindness for just allowing yourself to forgive yourself. It takes strength, resilience, courage, wisdom to forgive ourselves. You just did it in whatever fashion you did. You did it in this moment. You forgave yourself. Remember what that feels like within your body. Next, focus on someone or something, perhaps the person or that you named at the beginning of our workshop this evening, someone you want to offer forgiveness to, you'd like to forgive. Think of someone you want to forgive and say, I forgive you for not understanding. I forgive you for not understanding. Let that person, place, or thing, just hold them in your heart space, surrounding them with your love, God's love. And imagine you saying to them in your heart space, directly, heart to heart, I forgive you for not understanding. Allow yourself to experience the felt desire to forgive. Even if it's hard to forgive the person, that's okay. But notice in your body what the desire to forgive that person feels like. The felt sense of the desire to forgive within you. If the details of the hurt the person caused you come up, just relax. Bring the smile back to your face. Don't go back down the rabbit hole with the details. That's not important. What's important is the words, I forgive you for not understanding, and the felt sense within your body, what that desire to forgive feels like. If tears come up, which they may, receive it as gift from God, as the gift of tears, baptizing you with cleansing water. If you feel a sense of release in your body, like a lightening of the load within you, know that that is God's gift, God's grace to you in your body to take the load off of you. If you desire to move to another person or place or thing you need to forgive, feel free to let that arise. If not, stay with the same person. Whatever you need, just be open to whatever arises. Staying rooted and grounded in, I forgive you for not understanding. And when you're ready, we'll do the walking part of the meditation, forgiveness meditation, with our hands. So with your left hand, perhaps just raise it like you're walking with your hand and Say, I forgive you. And then with your right hand, you forgive me. Left hand, I forgive you. Right hand, you forgive me. Left hand, I forgive you. Right hand, you forgive me. Just stay with that gentle pace. Serendipity. If your mind wanders, which it will, just come back. I forgive you. You forgive me. Feel that flow of the movement of forgiveness as you move your hands. Feel the flow within you of forgiveness, love, compassion. And when you're ready, just stop for a moment. Just enter into the stillness with your eyes closed. Take a deep breath. Smile. Offer yourself gratitude for practicing forgiveness. You did it. You just practice forgiveness. Pat yourself on the back spiritually for embracing this practice as a spiritual tool. Knowing you can come back to it anytime you want, both in your meditation practice, in the quiet stillness, but also throughout the day. Whenever stress, anxiety, whenever you get angry at yourself or others, you could just come back to this amazing, simple tool. I forgive you for not understanding. Or I forgive you. You forgive me. And when you're ready, just draw your attention back to the place where you're sitting. Notice your body, a little smile on your face, and open your eyes whenever you'd like to. And turn on your screen again if you'd like. So I just threw some questions up there. What did you experience? What came up for you? Were there any feelings of release, forgiveness that you experienced? Any challenges? Were you able to offer forgiveness to the person you named at the beginning of today? And how did this practice resonate with you? Just any one of all of those questions, if you want to just reflect on them and share with the group here. How was that like for you?
So, yeah, I just felt very, almost felt like I was, especially when I was forgiving the other person, like I was in a soft blanket. It just felt very comfortable.
Mhm.
And then I had to forgive myself, and after I had already gone through that portion of it, because when I was forgiving the other person, there was an understanding of, I mean, this other person is limited. And so I was like, of course they don't understand. I mean, literally can't in some ways. So I had to forgive myself again, because I started to like sort of think, I'm forgiving somebody who doesn't have the capability to understand everything. So
Yeah.
that sort of, forgave myself for that. But it was real. I feel so much more or less mushy brain.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. More relaxed or more clarity or something like
It's like less mashed potato brain. That's how I've been feeling lately. Just
Ah, wow.
uh,
Yeah. And good for you, Susan, that you caught yourself going down the rabbit hole. You kind of began to intellectualize well, of course they can't, and which is okay, but you immediately you caught yourself and you brought yourself back to, I forgive you, you're forgiving yourself for going down the rabbit hole, trying to, intellectualize why this person is an idiot or whatever, I mean, and that's what oh, there I go again. That's okay. It's that sense of, yeah, that's why they call it practice. But recognize what you did do was you didn't continue down the rabbit hole, like either beating yourself up, like I'm doing it wrong, or I'm a idiot, or going down, trying to understand why this person doesn't, So yeah, I mean, so it sounds like it was and again, we would normally do this for 30 minutes or longer. So think about it in maybe 10, 15 minutes, how the Spirit of God can work in the midst of that. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Were you able to sense a little bit of release of the person that you were forgiving somehow?
absolutely. I mean, I love this other person, so that's what I was predominantly feeling, and smiling, not having to even force that.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Powerful. Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Yeah, that's
Thank
cool.
you.
And I think by sharing our experience, and it's all different, each one of us is going to share different because the Spirit, God's Spirit, is unique in each one of us. But to be able to verbalize and say, wow, yeah, that's what I experienced. This is what I experienced. Be able to give it words, because I think there's so few places that we can talk about what we're really experiencing is the contemplative path of experiencing forgiveness. Yeah. So giving it language and in a community to support each other, like tonight, yeah. And recognize that you empower the people that are going to watch this video. I've had a number of people, I can't come tonight, but you've empowered them to, oh yeah, this works. I did it, as my grandson says. Anybody else want to share what you experienced?
I will just say that I'll call it a mantra. I'm not sure if that's what it is, but I forgive myself for not understanding was very powerful. At first it wasn't. I didn't quite understand, Um, but then upon just more thought and the reminder that that's what Jesus said on the cross, forgive them, for they know not what they do, or they don't
Yeah.
understand. It just resonated with me. So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And it made, I don't know, it just made it easier that yes, I didn't understand. And the person that maybe I want to forgive didn't understand. We just
Yeah. Yeah.
and we are human and it happens.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so simplistic in some ways.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
To give ourselves that grace. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a it was a very good exercise. Thank you.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and to be honest with you, Joan, I never realized it until tonight, as I was preparing for tonight. It's like, oh my gosh, it's exactly what Jesus said on the cross. Father, forgive them; they know not what they do. It's like, oh yeah, a little different language, but it's the same
It's
spirit.
the same.
Yeah,
You just thought about that tonight before
It-
this.
the
Wow.
spirit just popped that in. I don't take any credit. But when I prepare for a workshop, I certainly have my preparation ahead, but I pray for the grace of emptiness. I just the grace of emptiness. I learned that from a spiritual director years ago. Just make me an instrument. And yeah, that's the beauty of it. It pushes the ego out of there. And yeah, these little dive bombs.
Wow,
come in.
wow.
So, yeah,
That's even more meaningful for some reason that it came up
Yeah,
tonight. Because prior to you, well, when you added that part, then I was like, okay, all right.
yeah,
It makes sense. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And it takes the intellectual piece. Yeah, I know 7 times 70, but how? How do I do that? And
Right.
what I found this practice, I'm 65 years old. I wish I would have known a long time ago, maybe I wasn't ready, but it's like, whoa. And you're like you said, yeah, Joan, it's so simple, but it's so deep. And that's,
Yes.
I think, where the grace of God, that's where the Holy Spirit just enters in, because we're literally, opening our heart and quieting the mind so that this simple practice can bring us to that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Is it a practice that you can see yourself, Joan, wanting to continue in some
Oh,
way?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Anybody else? Randy or Jan?
Very nice. Very simply, more light in the head and more warmth in the heart.
Mm,
Just very sweet, very simple. Thank you.
nice. Are you letting God off the hook, Randy, or are you still mad at him?
Yeah, I think that in my Sufi type of stuff, they say ultimately it's between you and God.
Mm,
And so basically, I did feel there's a Sufi quality of, I made the mistake, please forgive me. That's that walking, please forgive me.
mm,
I know you forgive me. God forgives me for my mistakes. And so, like
mm,
you said, it brings in humility, it brings in accountability, the willing to learn, and grace that God does forgive us. We're human,
mm.
and then we can have more compassion for those people who didn't know. So it empowers us instead of wanting the ego mind wants to be right.
Yeah.
So it brings in a lot more peace. And
Mm,
at the very nature, at the very center of our being, the kingdom of heaven, God's presence is a state of peacefulness, is a state of grace, is a state of love. So
mm,
it's helping us to release those blocks. It says in the Course in Miracles, uh, love is beyond what's able to be taught, but this can help us release the block to love's awareness, which is our true birthright, which is returning us to that, like you said, the divine flow, the presence that we are creating our own blocks based upon our unenforceable rules, how life should be. And your lecture was magnificent about all the reasons. I didn't understand that I was blocking myself from releasing based on my self-righteousness. I didn't
mm.
understand I was making these unenforceable rules for you, God. It's like Job going to God and saying, look, I did everything right. How come you're alive? And so it's just kind of like allowing ourselves to receive God's grace, God's forgiveness.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And thank you, Randy, for being vulnerable and that your relationship with Yahweh, God, the divine, is so intimate that you can tell God, I'm mad at you. I'm angry. I mean, I think I learned that years ago. to be mad at God is like, that's okay. Sometimes that's my best prayer is screw you, God. I'm sick of this, and hopefully it's not all the time, but to know that the intimate relationship with God is so deep that we can be angry at God, and that's okay. He's got big shoulders, and that even that becomes a healing as you just expressed.
And you said it, nothing takes away God's unconditional love for us. We can be angry at him and we just don't understand.
Yeah.
And then we get, like you said, oh, we need to learn to be more understanding, more compassionate,
Yeah.
less self-centered, less, oh, I've got all the answers. I love your prayer to pray just to be open, to be an open vessel. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's very, what I love about you, Brian, and what I admire about you, Brian, is you bring it to the street level and make it simple, some very profound things. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. It feels like my calling to take these big topics and and bring it to street level spiritual. Okay, how do we practice it? Because I'm struggling with myself. I'm trying to figure it out. I just kind of, okay, God, what do I do about forgiveness here? Okay, I'm going through an ego death. What do I do? And the forgiveness practice pops up. So it's, as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will arrive. And so, yeah, I'm grateful.
One other thing, when you sent that email out that I want to thank you for, in the Sufi practice, they say, die before you die. And my ego mind is afraid of dying. But the way this practice is, it's not dying as much as it's allowing the place to receive love. Because when you have to be right in the ego, there is no happiness, there is no love. But dying before you're dying is just allowing yourself to be filled more with love, which is your gift, which is God's gift to us, which was never taken away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Isn't that what he showed us? Exactly. Yeah. By example, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. That is good stuff. And it's amazing. It's simple. But it's so deep. And wouldn't that be like God to just give us work through a Buddhist monk? I mean, that's where I learned it from, and then integrate it into our own tradition, whatever our tradition is, as a way of experiencing forgiveness. And God knows in our culture, in our world right now, it has always been that way. It's, that we all need to forgive ourselves, forgive each other, and just for not understanding. And the mystery, I think the other part of this is it allows for me, because as I mentioned, I was angry at God at this retreat too. It's like, God, I didn't want it. It's not supposed to be this way, but it allows me to accept the humility of mystery. Okay, like Job, I'm not going to figure everything out, on this side of it. And that's okay. I begin to accept mystery. Thank you, God, for helping me recognize I don't understand mystery. And like Job, I don't understand why there's so much suffering in the world. I just know, one, that I contribute to it sometimes, my own self, but I also know that I'm open to you helping me forgive myself so that I can love myself, forgive others, and love them, which is what we're called to do. So that sense of mystery too, I think is part of the journey. So yeah. Any other thoughts? Thank you so much. So the question, where do you go from here? Taking it home and into the streets. How do we live in this world, but we're not of it? How do we live in this world and take what we just learned tonight? And I would just, the recommendations are to consider practicing the forgiveness meditation every day, even if it's, if you've got a meditation practice, even if it's at, a few minutes at the end of it, when you feel that sense of you're not you're angry at yourself, you're not forgiving yourself or someone else. Yeah, just again, use this simple practice each day, and use the words. I think those words that Bhante came from, and he actually got it from some of the, I don't know, but some of the sutras, basically, from studying them for eons of years, that's where he felt is, I forgive you for not understanding. So use those words whenever an ill thought arises toward yourself, towards someone else, or to something else. So those words, I forgive you for not understanding, or the short version, I forgive you, you forgive me, that's another quick way that you can use either one of those. And notice that felt sense of desire to forgive. How does that feel in your body? And it can change. It's not always the same. But where do you feel that? I notice, I used to think it was always in my heart space, but I'm noticing lately, I feel it in my gut. There's just my gut just, maybe it's because I'm gaining weight too, and I'm getting fatter. So my tummy's a little, bigger than it used to be. But anyway, that's another story. But no, I feel a sense of just, energy, of flow, of, just aliveness, creativity in my gut. So just reckon it can change from time to time, but let that felt sense of your desire to forgive, feel it in your body. So I just want to thank you all, those that are here tonight, those that will see this in a recording version. Thank you for your openness and commitment to today's practice. Remember that forgiveness is a gentle and an ongoing process. So once we've forgiven ourselves and another person, it doesn't mean, oh, I've closed the door. I wish it was that way. I've closed the door. I'll never be angry at myself again. I'll never be angry at this person. No, it's going to come up again. And I think the reason is Sister Nancy Brousseau, one of my spiritual directors years ago, said, God works with us not in a linear fashion. It's not like, okay, I've achieved this step now. The world is always about climbing a ladder. What she said is our spiritual growth is always a spiral down and a spiral back up. So, so I probably wasn't ready for the forgiveness meditation until recently, last whatever it was. And sometimes I got to come back to. So God just brings us down as deeply as we can into these onion skins, these new tools we're learning. So we don't need to say, oh, I have to achieve this for the rest of my life. No, God is in control of our spirits. It's the Holy Spirit, the great spirit, the divine that's moving in us. We just got to develop practices and to get out of the way. And so it's okay that we get angry at ourselves, but we're training ourselves again to practice. Oh, I forgive you, Brian, for not understanding. I forgive you, you forgive me, or the people in our lives. So it's going to come and go, and that's okay. Keep the intention alive of forgiveness, and know that the more you practice, again, that muscle memory, your spirit memory, the more you practice, the more layers of hurt and suffering will be released. And I love James Finley, one of my spiritual mentors at the Richard Rohr Living School, would always say, sometimes the spiritual life is like you practice these things, meditation, this forgiveness, meditate, whatever it is, and you don't even recognize until all of a sudden you look over your shoulder and go, wow, I'm not as angry as I used to be. I don't get as frustrated with myself or other people. You begin to recognize, again, I love what my I did it. God did it. God and I did this together. I practiced these things. I became intentional, but wow, I did it. I did it. I forgave myself. I loved myself today. I can look in the mirror today and say, I love you with all of your good points. Yeah. So it is an ongoing process. That's why they call it practice. Be kind and compassionate with yourselves as you continue this journey. As we're kind and compassionate with ourselves and develop at that, we're then able to be kind and compassionate with others, because it's not the false ego that other people and ourselves are beating up against. It's this compassionate, loving, natural heart within us. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any questions? So a question I always like to end with, we've talked about a lot of things, we've experienced things, we've kind of thrown, what could be a week-long workshop into, 2 hours to an hour and 90 minutes. What's the gift that you received today? What would you say? Yeah, this is, I think Father Don, one of my other spiritual mentors, used to say that in a spiritual direction session, we talk about so much stuff and it's like a big funnel. There's all this information and these experiences. And if you had to kind of bring it down like in a funnel to a word, a phrase, a practice, something that you're going to put in your spiritual backpack and say, this is the gift God gave me today. What is the gift that you received today? The wisdom, the knowledge, the gift.
I would just say enlightenment, I guess.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah.
And and I'm not sure why, but I'm going to say freedom. Like a,
Mm, yeah. Yeah, that was the title. Discover inner freedom through forgiveness.
oh,
That's the title. Yeah, freedom.
didn't know
Whoa.
that was the title, but
Yeah,
okay.
there you go, Joe. You did
Yeah.
it. Freedom. Yeah. Yeah. It is a freedom, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
to forgive, it's like, wow.
Huge.
Yeah.
And if you look at the word freedom, Dr. Jaffe in my healing school says free dome. The dome is now open. This thing where we got all these belief systems rolling around,
Ah,
the dome. So the three centers, the dome where we can get inspiration, knowledge, like you said, you got that drop in, free dome, love in the heart, and then the belly where the inner child is. The inner child is born a new freedom, new peace, new happiness.
mm. Powerful. Yeah, I think for me, the gift I received was was that, that Holy Spirit going, oh wow, this is just like Jesus on the cross. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. It's like, oh my God, this is a practical tool to do what he taught us on the cross. It's like, wow, that connection that popped in, it's like it brings tears to my eyes and it affirms God is so present in each one of us. It's like, wow, yeah. Anybody else?
Well, in that moment that I realized the person I was asking to forgive is incapable of certain mental processes, I, sort of, and then at that single moment when I kind of just like kind of laughed a little bit because I said, oh, he's incapable, mentally incapable, that I laughed and I forgave myself and another person, and that experience, as I said, brought a genuine smile and a little twinkle. And I haven't had a lot of joy and happiness lately. So that
Mm.
was a profound feeling for me just to have that naturally happen.
Wow. Yeah.
Happiness and some love and some happiness.
Yeah. Powerful. Yeah. The fruit of the spirit. Yeah. Wow. So cool. Thank you, Susan. Yeah. And savor that. That's the beauty of whatever we experience. And I just, wow, savoring that. Like, wow, this is God. This is God moving in and through us, the incarnation of divine love. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Good stuff. Good stuff, everybody. Yeah. Well, I thought a closing prayer might be, I call it, it's actually Reinhold Niebuhr's in 1926. He wrote this prayer, and a lot of people aren't aware. Whoops, hit the wrong button there. Aren't aware that some people just call it the Serenity Prayer, and it stops right at the second paragraph, which is wisdom to know the difference. But there's another huge piece of it, and it really kind of brings into even deeper the sense of forgiveness and serenity. He called it the prayer for serenity, but I think it's also a prayer for forgiveness. So I just thought what we would do maybe is if we, each kind of go round robin here. So if someone wants to read the first stanza, and then somebody the next one, then the next stanza, until we've kind of gone through the whole thing. Does that make sense? And then we'll say the amen together. How's that sound?
Good.
Who would like to begin?
I'll go.
Thank you.
In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Courage to change the things I can and the wisdom to know the difference.
Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time.
Accepting hardship as a pathway to peace.
taking as God did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it.
Trusting that God will make all things right if I surrender to God's will.
that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with God forever in the next.
And everybody said,
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everybody. What a wonderful experience. And I appreciate you all being here. And thank you. God
Thank
bless.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.